Hey there, Detroit sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 211 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. It was the Detroit Sports Truth on Spreaker over a month ago, but it's now called the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that actually gets it right and reveals the truth instead of just being honest with lazy opinions. I'm Taylor Phillips. I'm live from my basement apartment office in the northern outskirts of McBain, Michigan, and making his return to the program with me on Facebook Messenger audio from the state of Georgia, as always, is my co-host Ed Smith. Welcome back, Ed Smith. Thanks for coming back and being on here with me. How are you, and how's your mom progressing?
I'm feeling wonderful, Taylor, and thank you for the question. She's doing quite well. Everything's going quite as fine. Speaking of which, a belated Happy Mother's Day. I want to wish to her and to yours as well, and to all the mothers in the world, obviously. Everything's going fine. Its prognosis has been as great as we would hope. She'll be up and at on her feet quickly in no time. Thank you, by the way, for your support, checking on me throughout this hiatus, make sure I was doing okay, make sure my mother was doing all right as well. I really appreciate it, Taylor. And now here I am. I'm back, and I'm ready to roll once again. Back in the saddle, as they say.
Oh, yeah, baby. That is correct. Ed Smith, ELS, letters, Smitty as well, has made his return to the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. And just
the streamers and balloons.
Yep, that's correct. And just a reminder to please share this podcast on all social media networks, and thanks very much. And please keep it clean. First off, we're going to get to the Tigers and how they're faring right now. Also, we're going to get to some Red Wings, and I'm gonna have Ed share his thoughts on how the Tigers have fared thus far this season through 31 games over a month, almost a month and a half since it's already May 9th.
Yeah, it's a definite fair. I think it's fair to make that type of an analytic look, from what we've seen so far in this team. You don't want to do it at the end of last month because you think, okay, it's April, season just started, but here we are now. We're approaching the middle of May. What we're seeing is we had a team that started off great, especially from the offensive standpoint, from not just your usual guys, Miguel Cabrera, J.D. Martinez. You also saw other guys step up, namely, for one instance, Jared Saltalamacchia, and you also saw glimpses of Victor Martinez possibly returning to his, I guess you could say, 2014 form, not necessarily his 2011 through 13 form, but still far better than what he was last year, proving that last season was, in fact, so far has been an anomaly. And then, after that, I think it was just an inconsistent set of, once again, your pitching is just being the problem here. For the most part, it seems with our starting rotation, it's something like it was last year when David Price was here, whereas Jordan Zimmerman has been, on most instances, your knowledgeable, consistent source that he will give you a good start today. Whereas you just don't know with the other guys, Verlander, Sanchez especially, and the bullpen even. It's still not. Example. Another thing that caught my eye is how they got to do inside their own division, because that's going to be one key to how if they want to possibly take back the Central Division, they got to win games against teams within their own division. And so far, they've just been absolutely being owned by, of all teams, the Cleveland Indians. So those are things if you could dissect from the first month plus of what has been for the season. It's been infuriating, agonizing, and just flat out confusing. Confusing would be the proper word to sum everything up, not to mention how everyone else feels. I'm sure my thoughts include as well on, man, it really, in terms of hindsight, but also just looking at it from Pound's perspective, it's, in a way, it's been validated for those that wanted Brad Ausmus fired after last year. They're for sure, and vindicated in a sense, because now, especially from paying reports to which were started first, of course, by Jeff Moss, Justice Spiro, and the DSR, but yet again proven it's not credited by the local media or any of any sort. If you pay attention to those reports, you will realize the fact that Mike Ilitch was contemplating firing Office last year. I wish he had, because now we would have been witnessing this further decrepit sinkhole that is becoming this season, unfortunately.
Speaking of Jeff Moss and Justin Spiro, they split up. Jeff Moss fired Justin Spiro for some kind of heated argument, especially when it came down to the struggles of one Mike Pelfrey that the Tigers signed in the offseason, which understandably they need to release Mike Pelfrey. Jeff Moss was liking Mike Pelfrey, and Justin Spiro was absolutely hating Mike Pelfrey. Spiro thought he was terrible. Jeff Moss said he was good. I would say he's average. He's not terrible, and he's not good either. He's kind of in between. Wouldn't you say, Ed?
It's middle of the road for sure. I think for once, Moss probably, which has been shocking for him, he's been a little bit more optimistic about a player. So, me being an optimistic in nature, I'd say Pelfrey, no, he has not been as nowhere near impressive, but I think there is still room for him to improve. So, yeah, that hope amongst that mindset as well.
That one is long gone.
We are talking Tigers right now on the Michigan Sports Truth. We'll get to some Red Wings and Pistons and Lions and how they fared in the NFL draft later on the show. But lately, the offense has become abysmal. Like the last few weeks. Not only just on Brad Ausmus. I know he should be fired. Either now or soon, but their offense just stinks.
Still, yeah, exactly. This team, especially from the offensive staff, but it's not helped Ausmus build his case either. Can't necessarily blame him. It's his job as match for players the best spots to perform. At the end of the day, it's up to the players to perform themselves. And when you're seeing guys like your Justin Uptons, your freaking Signey that you coveted this past off season, hitting far below 300. Miguel Cabrera currently under 300. Jose Iglesias not having a strong start. The great year that he had, actually continued the great year that he continued off from where he had a great year last year. Those guys that I just mentioned hitting under 300 at the moment. OPB is not looking good as well. It's quite something. It's quite astonishing when so far the two guys that's your top leaders in OPS is one of which is a pitcher, Jordan Zimmerman. Granted it was it's only been one. His at-bats are limited, but hey, they say about sample size. And the other is Nick Castellanos of all people. Now Castellanos, he has improved. He's gotten better with his power. He's showing more pop in his bat. So he has 26 RBIs so far this season, which is, believe it or not, more so than Cabrera and and Justin Upton combined. So Castellanos is showing his worth in the lineup. You have to consider maybe the way he's performing, possibly get moved up more so. And, Jared Saltalamacchia, he's had a bit of a comeback down to earth moment after his hot start. Now currently sitting at 211 batting average as well, 655 OPS. And, it's quite troubling to say the least, because one of the things that was keeping this season on the upbeat is now starting to fall back towards, I guess you could say, ordinary levels, if not flat out disappointing. And that's the last thing you want this team to do, especially if your guy that's basically fighting for his job in Brad Osmus.
And speaking of which, when the Tigers fire Brad Osmus, which we don't know when, we have to look forward here. You got Jim Leyland and Ron Gardenhire again. Many fans are raving for Gardenhire again, but some other fans want Leyland back. And then you got another group of fans that want Omar Vizquel as manager. But Detroit Sports Nation, for example, wanted Ron Gardenhire as the next manager.
Illogical.
He freaking sucks.
If you bring back Ron Gardenhire, it'll be worse than bringing back Leland, in my opinion, because it's like, either way, even with one of these choices, it's still going to be a bit of a downgrade. Well, it's not necessarily an upgrade from Osmus. It will still be middle of the road, to the same wallowing type of pit that this team is currently on. Maybe with Leland, the fact that there's the familiarity between the majority of the players in the roster and Leland, I think there'll be a level of respect shown, because I think there's an issue of no respect being shown towards Osmus that could be affecting how this team is performing as a whole. They just don't believe in their guy whatsoever, and maybe with a new voice in there, not necessarily new, but a different voice from what they're seeing, and maybe a familiar voice in Jim Leyland, you'll be sensing hopefully a more better effort from the players. Maybe if it takes somebody lighting into them, you will hope it will come from inside. You have to depend on. You hope it will come from the likes of your Justin Verlander or Miguel Cabrera. Two of your veteran leaders that have been there for a long while. You would think they would be so frustrated at how this team is performing, but the expectation that at the very least that this city has been placed on them to not only try to strive to play for the playoffs again, but also possibly try to compete for the World Series again. You would have to expect that to come from inside, not from waiting on either your manager or your general manager to yell at you or whatever the case, to light a fire underneath you. You got to do that on your own, as not only grown adults but professional players as amongst a team. You as a leader, whether it be set upon by the fans or not, you're essentially a captain. That's why we consider Verlander or Cabrera to be the unofficial captains of the squad. So nobody's going to take it up somebody better, because if there's a chemistry issue or whatever the case is, it's got to be fixed and rectified now before this season goes completely off the rails.
Yeah, and which leads us to Jim Leyland. Justin Spiro on Twitter at Darko State News has been tweeting that he got sources from sources on Mike Ilitch's side that he's fed up with Brad Osmus, and he's been raving Leyland. Ilitch and Leyland have been, as of late, through tonight, have been having a discussion. Leyland has not said no right off the bat. Leyland, Jimmy smokes, in other words. Jim Leyland is actually giving it some thought, at least. Could the Tigers actually bring him back?
I could see it with the case of Jim Leyland recognizing how much he is quite well liked by at least a majority portion of the fans. So even though it turned long term is not the best option for this team, for the fans that like to see, want to see something done, I think this would satisfy that portion of the fan base, because not only are you getting rid of a guy that you want to see gone at Osmus, you're also bringing back someone that I would say got a favorable, has a favorable reputation amongst, the majority of Tiger fans, or at least the ones that don't really delve into or pay attention to the analytics or sabermetrics department on how this game is run nowadays. So you'll satisfy that portion of the fan base, no doubt, but it just makes you wonder how it's going to last long term for the team as a whole, how they will improve, how they will perform as a collective and cohesive unit. Now, with Leland coming back to begin with, it must, it's either going to take, it must mean he's had a real long thought about heart-to-heart with Mike Ilitch, and also possibly might have conversed with Brad Ausmus as well, because I'm pretty sure, from what we can tell from these reports, from what we've seen in the past, whatever, Jim Leland does have a level of respect for Brad Ausmus, and I think he would feel some level of guilt upon himself if this was done just so that he could come back to the Tigers. And you have to wonder if Jim Leland does even want to come back. There is a reason why he did retire. Because when he stepped down from his position as manager, he didn't go to anybody else; he just flat out retired. So, there's got to be a lot of incentive to not only come back out of retirement, to go back on the road, the grind of doing, the whatever 100+ odd games that's left in this season, and potentially a postseason. Maybe, who knows? Maybe with this past few year hiatus, Jim Leland has had to recharge his batteries, so to speak, or to say the least. But something must have happened if you're seeing this possible consideration of the route that Mike Ilitch at least wants to go for the Tigers.
And some have said the Leland ship has sailed, including Jack Ebling, which I may have to agree with. Leland's already an old guy, but still, you never know. Justin Spiro could be right too on his sources. It's just going to come down to the final moments of that discussion between Leland and Mike Ilitch. We'll have to see how it transpires.
Yeah, and even if, say for instance Leland ultimately does decide to decline instead of coming back, where does that leave Tigers, or where does that leave Ilitch? Does he still go through? Does he fire Ausmus? If that's the case, yeah, I would say put the poor guy out of his misery and just bring on Omar Vizquel and do whatever you can to find a more permanent replacement as quickly as possible, unless you want to let the rest of the season get out of hand.
And then moving on to next season, I think we recall that, according to Jeff Moss, that Manny Acta, the third base coach of the Seattle Mariners, has a 1-year contract. Is that correct?
I haven't had a chance to look up upon that, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. If that is, that would be, great for those of the analytics department that want to see something of that happen for the Tigers. And I think, like we've touched on this before, multiple episodes. There is a chance that this could work out. I think Acta is himself, a more than adequate manager, and if you give him a better operating payroll, as well as expectations from a city that wants, and a team and a fan base that wants to win and win now, I think you'll see a team perform here in Detroit under Acta than you would have in, say, Cleveland, for instance. So who knows? The jury may still be out on that.
Right, and there's still fans out there that are being fooled by just his track record and think he's a bad manager. But what they're missing, of course, is his incredible knowledge of sabermetrics and his better in-game decisions. And like we've said many times before, or earlier in the past, the Indians, as Manny Acta managed them, has killed them. Their roster has killed them. So,
this wasn't like your 2007 Cleveland Indians team that had a young Victor Martinez on their squad.
Eric Wedge actually managed the Indians in 2007. They went on to win the AL Central and make it to the ALCS against the Boston Red Sox,
where they unfortunately blew a 3-1 lead. A lot of people argue that was
That's
a team
right.
that could have that probably should have won the World Series that year. Especially if they went up against the Colorado Rockies team that the Red Sox easily swept.
Yeah, because the Red Sox are actually one of the best teams in baseball in today's world since 2004 when they broke that curse.
Yeah.
And won their first World Series since 1918.
Yeah, since 04. And think about that. That's a team that somehow broke a long-standing World Series drought, and yet the Tigers haven't. Granted, some circumstances have been different, admittedly, but still, like when you see a team and the Red Sox go from being the butt of everyone's joke, the Sisyphus of baseball for almost 90 years, and then within a 10-year span, win 3 World Series titles. That lets you know, in my opinion, not only how times have changed, but also analytics does play a role. Because I'm sure Theo Epstein, when he first started at the helm, he put insight into framework into what led to those championship teams, and they just followed suit, and we see where Boston is now. So maybe, hopefully, you see something similar happen for our Tigers. Something happens that happened where it will lead to a World Series title.
But there are other options out there that are just as good as Manny Acta was as a manager, even though, despite his track record, there's also Gabe Kapler, as I also mentioned. Jeff Moss also put in Alex Cora and Joey Cora earlier today on the Schuling Report on the Team 92.1 FM WQTX in downtown Lansing in the studios at 105 West Allegan Road in Lansing. Alex Cora and Joey Cora. I think you've heard that from Jeff Moss as well. They're probably good at sabermetrics as well.
I'm sure if this was a decision that was clearly and solely left up to Al Avila, he would have not only A, fired Ausmus by now, but B, been on the immediate search to find a permanent replacement. If it means you can stick with Vizquel for a temporary basis, fine. But Avila would have been working, day in and day out. Who knows? Maybe he's doing that right now to find a suitable replacement for Ausmus. And also one that would fit to his needs, finding one that's more versed and knowledgeable about the metrics aspect of things. Whereas clearly, from what we're seeing and hearing, is this Mike Ilitch still runs the show, and damn it, the old billionaire is going to get what he wants.
Yeah, I have to agree there. So I think we've covered Tigers for now. We would have to add a bonus question regarding Manny Acta on 5 questions at the end of this episode. So moving on to some Red Wings now. Well, in Jeff Blashill's first season in his career as an NHL head coach with the Detroit Red Wings, they made it to the playoffs for the 25th consecutive year, which is granted and understandable, but when it came down to the end of the regular season in a close race, the Red Wings didn't even get the job done, but still got some help from some major help from the Boston Bruins, who got clobbered by the Ottawa Senators 5-1 at the end of the regular, on the day that the regular season ended. Meanwhile, the Red Wings losing to the Rangers 3-2 in regulation, they they backed in to the playoffs for like the second, at least the second season in a row, and then almost like last year, except it's worse. See, last year under Mike Babcock, the Red Wings pushed the Lightning to 7 games, but they got eliminated for the second in the first round by the Lightning, and that was the second straight first round exit for the Wings after the Boston Bruins eliminated them in 5 games in the first round in 2014. But now, under Jeff Blashill, the Red Wings got eliminated in 5 games by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and now that's the 3rd time in a row, and the 4th time in 5 years that the Red Wings got knocked out of in the first round. And then after the season, General Manager Ken Holland in his postseason press conference, he says, quote, "We have to stay the course, and the fans should expect less," unquote. And Ken Holland is just never going to change. But not to mention Andreas Athanasiou, who was recently called up. Jeff Blashill still never gave him enough ice time to let him help the team, especially because Athanasiou, for instance, scored like 8 goals in his last 15, like 3 or 4 assists in his last 15 or 20 games in the regular season, and then he scored a goal in Game 3 against the Lightning. He showed what he is made of, and I still think Athanasiou deserves a lot more ice time. We get it. He's a rookie, but don't take Athanasiou for granted. He is one major lightning bolt. He's even better than Dylan Larkin.
Tremendous speed. Yeah, that's in some instances for sure, especially with the speed comparison as well. How he would move on the ice and the way he performed, moving well, great speed, just making great plays and drawing penalties. You would have thought that would warrant him getting more and more ice time, but no. In Game 5, all Athanasiou got was 5 minutes and 44 seconds of time on ice. 5 minutes, 44 seconds. The only person that had less time rather, in terms of time on ice was Joachim Anderson. Okay? Other than that, Athanasiou was my goodness, for God's sakes, even that, when Kyle Quincy has more minutes than him, Darren Helm has more minutes than him, not to mention the atrocities rather, that are Jonathan Ericsson and Nicholas Cronwall. Those guys having more minutes, yet Athanasiou only gets less than 6. It's flat out embarrassing and appalling.
Yeah, those were just a few games that he got less than 6 games. Usually in the dying games of the regular season, he got less than 10. But it's still crazy either way.
You're crazy! You're crazy! You're crazy! Are you crazy?
Holland put this roster together. Trust me, there's plenty of blame coming his way, especially with some of the awful, horrendous contracts he has signed over the years. Veterans, either the wrong veterans that had nothing left, or passing out on the right ones to sign the wrong ones, and not to mention the absolutely terrible poison pill contracts that he has given his two defensemen.
That's right, like Jonathan Ericsson and Nicholas Cronwall, who are stuck, as people say, on those long-term contracts that Ken Holland signed them to. It's just all boiling down it's just an example of how it all boils down into a dysfunctional organization in the Red Wings, just like the Lions, which we're gonna get to later on. But the Red Wings are becoming the next Detroit Lions. What you say? I know they've won 4 Stanley Cups in their lifetime. Spare me with that. Spare me that, okay, please. That's all yesterday's news, okay?
Yeah, it's been 8 years since the last cup. Okay, we're officially approaching almost a decade, literally a decade since the Wings last won a cup. Okay, so now granted, I don't want to sound like, I'm such a spoiled Wings fan, because I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that in my lifetime I've seen this team won 4 cups, get the 6 final series in total, be perennial contenders year in, year out. But something has got to change here. I want to expect better. I deserve to see better. A team like this should not be first-round exits 3 straight years and 4 out of the past 5. A team like this that has the lineage and history behind it should not have confusion as to who the hell they want their starting goalie to be. A team that has the lineage and history as the Red Wings should be better positioned and better performed, not just at the head coaching spot, not just with certain players, but also in the front office period. They should not have a GM that is essentially close to the laughingstock of the league here, with bad deals, bad contracts, and just overall horrendous loyalty to certain players that in the long term has caused and will continue to cause duress and dismay for the team as a whole.
Bam, just like that. And what about Mike Ilitch? Mike Ilitch is still supporting Ken Holland, which leads to an even bigger problem for this Red Wing franchise. It's all doomed.
It's all convoluted. I mean, especially when you tie in how Mike Ilitch is trying to handle, being still friends with Kenny, and while at the same time trying to fire Brad Ausmus for the Tigers. It's such a mess. I think that would be the right word to describe all this. It is an absolute mess. And I don't know how it's going to get better anytime soon, unfortunately.
That is so correct. Where was that sound? There we go.
When did you become so politically correct?
So Ken Holland's plan was to keep going after big-name free agents, and then I heard lately that from Ken Holland that the Red Wings are also looking for new assistant coaches, especially since Tony Granato, as mentioned before a couple of months ago, left for the Wisconsin Badgers head coaching position in college hockey.
And good for him. I wish him all the luck. I think he has a brighter future there than being on this sinking shipwreck of a team.
So just a quick question. Who do you think would be the 2 best assistant coaches to the Red Wings under Jeff Blashill, if he stays?
Oh boy, you stumped me on that one. I gotta give you props and credit for that. Has there been any sort of promotion from within like some of Blashill's staff when he was with the Griffins?
That would be a good point.
I think if you bring that type of familiarity around him, it will make Blashill probably feel more comfortable to be his own man instead of trying to be another Mike Babcock, which in turn will garner him more respect from his locker room. Like I said, between and once again back to the DSR, like the article that Moss put out regarding how essentially on most instances it's Henrik Zetterberg calling the shots and not the head coach. It just puts it, and not to mention I guess, as sort of a parting shot, a parting gift from the now family retired from NHL, Pavel Datsyuk, his cat hit. Oh, what a horrendous situation this team and this organization as a whole finds itself in.
Speaking of Jeff Blashill, if he gets fired this offseason, then who do the Red Wings bring in next? I would like to see them bring in either John Tortorella or Lindy Ruff. They are two tough coaches that can light a fire under the Red Wings again.
Tortorella would be recognizable to the folks of that not only see him for what he did with the Rangers, but also see his attitude in general and how, I guess, in some instances, probably be similar to what Jim Schwartz was when he was with the Lions, both good and bad for sure. I will admit, though, there was one name that what I would have liked to be seen as a possible contender, but unfortunately, he already got snatched up by the Minnesota Wild, and that is Bruce Boudreau. So I wouldn't have minded that as a scenario if, somehow the Red Wings decided, let's just blow everything up and got rid of Hahn, as well as Blashill. Had that been the case and Boudreau was still there, I wouldn't mind if the Red Wings take a shot at him. I've gotten my first-hand experience, introduction per se to Boudreau by watching him be quite the character with the HBO 24/7 series and the build-up to the Penguins Capitals Winter Classic. And in his 4 full seasons with the Ducks, he had a winning season, got to the playoffs every year. I think he would have a decent shot to have some measure of success here in Detroit.
Bruce Boudreau had to. Bruce Boudreau was fired by the Anaheim Ducks after they lost in the first round to the Nashville Predators, who are currently down 3-2 to the San Jose Sharks in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Update on that: I think they might have tied up the series and set it to a Game 7 with a 1 in overtime. I thought that was Game 4. Or as I'm checking right now, I think Game 6 was tonight.
Oh, is it? On CNBC? Oh, wait. Let me check here on NHL.com.
Yeah, I'm already looking at the front. Yeah, I'm looking at the front page on ESPN. There were 2 Game 6s tonight: Dallas, St. Louis, and San Jose, Nashville. These were the semifinal series.
Oh yeah, I just got it. Yeah, I just got the news. Victor Arvidsson scores early in overtime to lift Nashville to a Game 6 win against the Sharks. Predators force a Game 7. Predators winning that one 4-3. I completely missed that one. I believe that was on CNBC as well. The Stars and the Blues were on NBCSN. The Stars beating the Blues 3-2 to force a Game 7. So both Western Conference semifinal series are in Game 7s now. Isn't that very interesting?
How about that? It seems like for once we're getting more. It is nice to see playoff series be even if it doesn't always go to 6 or 7 games. You like to see competitive nature. You don't see total decimation from one team over another, which unfortunately what we saw from Tampa Bay over Detroit. Speaking of which, how about that? Steve Yzerman, getting back on subject of the Wings a little bit, as essentially the head honcho for hockey operations with the Lightning, for the second year in a row, has gotten this team to the Final Four, essentially, at least to the conference final, 2 years in a row. And by the way, this year is more impressive because he's doing it without Steven Stamkos.
Right.
How the hell can you do that and yet you face them and then you get blown out 4-1. That alone should get you fired as a GM, in my opinion, at least.
Also,
Not to mention,
Jeff Blashill fired as a head coach.
Blashill, I'm willing to give Blashill a benefit of the doubt, much like I did Ostis, because it is his first year. Second year, I would have wanted him gone as soon as the final horn buzzed. But since it's his first year, I will give him the benefit of the doubt, just like I did Ostis. But if he has a stinker of a sophomore, like Ostis did, I would definitely want him gone as well. But for the GM, absolutely, Ken Holland should have been fired as soon as that game ended. It's quite embarrassing that you still want to see. This loyalty can have a lot of means, but it also be means to a fault as well. It can also be detrimental. It can be quite costly in terms of what your plan should be for your team going forward in the long term. And you're seeing what it's caused to the Red Wings right now by seeing Mike Ilitch hanging on to Ken Holland as much as he has, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, I agree there. That's exactly true. You just can't let any of these things happen, and you made some great points, Ed. And I have missed all these. When you were gone, but yeah. But we'll have to see what happens in the off season and see how they do next year. Moving on to the Pistons now.
Left sideline three, and he answers.
The Pistons finally make the playoffs for the first time since 2009, like we talked about before. And then they get swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers because the Cavaliers are the defending Eastern Conference champions, but the Pistons put up some good fights in 3 of those 4 games. Game 2, the Pistons simply let get away. But how about Game 1 though? They were on a roll from the 3-point line, but Cleveland just keeps finding ways to win. But not to mention Andre Drummond's free throw shooting continuing to be abysmal at that point, costing the Pistons points and wins as well.
Andre Drummond with his free throw shooting, it put the Pistons in a spot because yes, even though that is essentially your franchise player, your star center, your big rebounding force, you need him on there, you want him out there, but because his free throw shooting is so bad that it's hurting your team from scoring points, you have no choice to put him on the bench. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a double-edged sword. You either have him on, get him hacked, send him to the line, miss his shots, you don't come up with any points, or you have one of your best players sitting on the bench at the end of crucial key games. So that was an unfortunate aspect, but still, even despite all that, they gave a Cleveland Cavaliers team, that Cavs team, its best punch, its best shot as much as they could for at least 3 of those 4 games, like you mentioned. Even Game 2 was, even though that was the one that got out of hand, for the first half in all these 4 games, this team started out quite well. Some great effort, great hustle, great energy, great shooting. Yes, there were the drawbacks, of course. One of them mainly being what Tobias Harris, or rather the lack of Tobias Harris in this one. He did not have very good performance from an offensive standpoint. He was struggling to find his shot. He finally did find it in Game 4, where I believe he had, 23 points, 11 rebounds, that sort of thing. Marcus Morris was also good as well. He had his good share of offensive outings as well. In Game 4, he had 24 points and 9 of 12 shooting. So with Morris and Harris, your 2 new acquisitions that you made in the past offseason at the trade deadline, those are 2 essential building blocks that will be helpful to this team moving forward and getting better. You're going to see that. You're going to see more and more of that. You saw, a young man like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who, and officially, I'm sold on him now. I was one of those ones that was screaming and wanted Joe Dumars' head on a platter for picking him instead of Trey Burke. But I'll be the first one to admit, hey, he shut me up. He proved me wrong because with the 3-point shooting that KCP was delivering in this series, there was one reason why the Pistons gave Cleveland so much fight, so much effort. But at the end of the day, when you're going up against a team that has 3 of the top 15 or 20 players in all of basketball. I'm talking LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love, and not to mention other role players such as a J.R. Smith or Channing Frye, or especially, at least in this series, J.R. Smith stepping up with 3-point shooting of his own. That is a team that's going to be very, very hard to beat, as was clearly evidenced what you saw on Sunday, Cleveland finishing off a second-round sweep of the Hawks. Back-to-back years, the Cavaliers have swept the Atlanta Hawks out of the playoffs. So, Pistons fans, so Pistons fans, they shouldn't be, yes, there is disappointment of, oh, wow, you would have liked to see them probably try to get their first playoff victory since 2008.
Of course.
But that will come next year, I think, because the way the effort and the fight and the grit that they showed in this series, you could have been more proud of them. And also, it gives you a learning lesson. It's a valuable learning lesson for a young team, young as this is, to not only gain experience, but also help it using as a motivating tool. But not, okay, we got that taste, but now we want it back again, and want even more of it, so year after year, and to get better and better as well. So, when you see this used as a motivating factor, I hope that is the case for our beloved Pistons.
Let's go back to benching Andre Drummond, which Stan Van Gundy did in the final 2 minutes of the game, just because of the free throw shooting that Andre Drummond has really scuffled in.
It got so bad. It's that bad because I think he is this regular season. He officially shot the lowest percentage ever completed for a full season for free throws ever in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is a damaging weakness. So, Stan Van Gundy's his hand was forced in that regard. Because it's called Andre. We love your talent. We love the potential that you have, but your lack of free throw, your lack of execution in this one particular area, a rather important area, is hurting our team's chances and hampering our chances to try to compete and possibly win some of these playoff games. So, like I said, it was damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're Stan Van Gundy in that situation, now it falls on, can Andre Drummond himself, what can he do for himself to get better and some way improve upon this? I'm not saying, oh wow, we become like a Steph Curry, become like one of some of these great point guards. Just be adequate. If you can you improve from terrible to just slightly below average, I'd be fine with that. If you went from 35% to maybe, 45, 50, maybe 55% in this next year or 2 years, I would consider that job well done and mission accomplished in that regard, for Andre Drummond's case at least.
Which leads us to the underhanded free throw shooting thing, which Andre Drummond was reportedly finally open to doing so. Stan Van Gundy was actually looking into it. Andre Drummond is actually accepting it. After all this controversy of Andre Drummond trying to shoot his free throws, Justin Spiro trying to give him a suggestion to shoot underhand, and the Pistons Palace event staff crew threatened to ban him from the Palace of all that.
Which was quite an excessive overreaction, not just by Drummond, especially by Drummond, but by the Pistons staff as a whole. I understand, wanted to keep it as a way to not see your team being belittled by your own fans, but I think this was just not the case here, and it just it made the Pistons and made Andre look especially bad on that part.
Right.
When were you so
now,
soft?
good for him. Maybe this is one step to him, not only admitting his faults, admitting his mistakes, but possibly maturing as a player and as a person.
And the question now is, how will this affect the hack a player strategy, the hack a Shack strategy, which the discussion thereof, which in one case they were contemplating on eliminating that or banning it or putting it against the rules, against NBA rules and regulations in game.
Yeah, if I'm Adam Silver, I would definitely see to it that that's on my priorities of what to do for this offseason in terms of rule change or rule modifications. Let that be at the top of the list of what you could do to modify that. Because it just, especially in terms of playoff games, it slows down the flow horrendously. And in one instance, I can see how it makes things a bit of a disadvantage. It makes the team was getting fouled. It puts them at a disadvantage, like, oh, crap, what are we going to do now? But at the end, I do say, though, even if you got rid of this rule, it's still on the player to get better himself at making their free throws. At the end of the day, you still got to get better. You still got to do drills, practice, shots, whatever the hell you got to do. You as a player have responsibility upon yourself to get better at this specific aspect that your job requires you to do as adequate as possible.
That is correct. That is the objective of how you play the game. We are going to look into the future for the Pistons this offseason in 5 questions. So, folks, be patient about this, please. Just bear with us. And going to the Lions here.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
And how they fared in their NFL draft. They picked up Taylor Decker as an offensive tackle from Ohio State at number 16 overall in the first round of the NFL draft 2016. They also picked up Alabama defensive tackle A'Shawn Robinson, and fans actually loved it. Not to mention they picked up 2 Michigan Wolverines players in offensive lineman Graham Glasgow and quarterback Jake Rudock, of all people.
How about that? So Jake gets to stay in the Midden State.
So does Graham Glasgow.
I know.
and
it's funny how life works out like that sometimes.
Yeah, and you're a Michigan fan too. That's got to be great for you, especially.
Yeah, it was a definite surprise, at least to see Jake Rudock, of all people, of all names, get drafted to the Lions, because I thought, why in God's name are you drafting another quarterback? But if you want to do it for depth, sure. I personally, felt that maybe that pick could have gone towards something else, maybe aiding more help on your defense, or if you want to stay on offense, possibly get another wide receiver. But, I'm happy for Jake Rudock. I saw how he performed in his senior season. If he gets enough reps, gets enough time, if he solidifies himself as a strong possible backup behind Matthew Stafford, props will be to him for that regard. As for the rest of the draft, I think, while myself personally, I probably would have gone defense with my first pick as well, first pick instead of the second pick. I could understand why they picked Taylor Decker. I would have been very intrigued if Laramie Tunsil was still on the board at 16, with the Lions gone after him. But he didn't. He instead went at 13 to the Dolphins. So I guess that left the second best remaining offensive tackle on this board left on the board in Decker, and so the Lions scooped him up at 16. Maybe that was their plan all along. Who knows? but I can understand the reasoning of why they want another offensive lineman, because as much as they still wanted to try to improve on the line as a whole, it was still not good. Matthew Stafford still got knocked around far too many times that one would like to see, and their running game was just virtually non-existent. So with this pick, with the moves that you're doing, especially with what they did with selecting Graham Glasgow later on, it's trying to build a substantial offensive line that, at the very least, even if you don't get that much of a great running game production from your running game, at the very least, you're building a comfortable wall to protect your franchise quarterback in Matthew Stafford. So that's my analysis on that. The A'Shawn Robinson pick, I definitely wholeheartedly give 2 big thumbs up on, because I discussed with you before, Taylor. I think this is one of the big needs that this team needed to do. They needed to improve on their defensive line, especially in the wake of the departures of both Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley. A past his prime, Haloti Ngata is not going to cut it. With Ziggy Ansah and Devin Taylor doing great work on the ends, you need a good run stopper up the middle. And A'Shawn Robinson is that guy. He comes from a loaded powerhouse team in Alabama, and even though he's not as quite apt in terms of getting to the quarterback, he's still a very valuable run stopper. So if you accentuate that strength of his first and foremost, and then worry about focus more about building his secondary skills in terms of getting to the quarterback at a later time, you could still see this to be a very valuable pick in terms of your defensive line as a whole becoming not quite the strength as it was when Sue was here, because like I said, it's finding an Ndamukong Suh is like a dime a dozen. It's like finding a Calvin Johnson. It's very once in a while, almost once in a generation, I would say, that you find that type of player. And it just sucks that, the Lions, it sucks for the fans at least that they have to witness a team squander said talents and let said talents, the aforementioned talents, walk away either through free agency or retirement, But they did a good job with this pick of A'Shawn Robinson. On the whole, I'm not too. I could say I'm slightly above a passing grade, but we'll get to that later once we hit 5 questions. I don't want to give away everything right now.
Right, but great analysis on Jake Rudock, especially, and A'Shawn Robinson. Yeah, it's unfortunate that the Lions, by most means, missed out on Robert Nkemdiche after all that hashtagging of streaky for Nkemdiche that we've gone through at the beginning of last season, and how the Lions improved the last half of the season.
Even still, you still would have had a shot to get him because, do his, I guess you could say, subsequent arrest or bust for marijuana, whatever the case, it made his stock fall, unfortunately as it was, but it left him in a prime position where maybe you could have taken him at 16. So imagine that. Imagine if the Lions had taken Nkemdiche at 16, and if A'Shawn Robinson was still there next round, taking him. You have quite a versatile defensive line with your 2 big guys up the middle, dynamic duo of sorts with Robinson and Nkemdiche. Nkemdiche with his, as close to a Sue, not quite Sue, but close to it, with his ability to not just, push through and stop the run, but has the chance to get after the quarterback once in a while. Taylor and Ansah as your ends, you would have instantly made this defensive line put fans on notice to say, hey, you know what, we're making this defensive line a formidable strength again. It's still not there yet, but it is, I think, will be a bit of an improvement from what we saw last year. And that's saying something considering the breakthrough that Devin Taylor had, as well as the great year that Ziggy Ansah had.
Speaking of Nkemdiche and A'Shawn Robinson, wouldn't it be twice as radical and awesome if the Lions would have had both Nkemdiche and Robinson?
Yeah, exactly. Like it would have been like, seeing the potential of what you could have gotten if Sue and Fairley had stayed here. Only you get a reset on that, and it's 2 young players that you're drafting at the same time. But alas, it's a what if scenario that that we have to live with the choice of. I do appreciate the fact that they paid some attention to their secondary by selecting Miles Killebrew out of Southern Utah. They recognized that, hey, we need a safety. James Ahidebo, we had to part ways with him, and Abdul Qudus, he was gone too, so they needed a safety. They got one of Miles Killebrew. Let's hope that works out. And they also picked a linebacker too, Antoine Williams out of Georgia Southern. How about that, Georgia boys making a proud representation? Because, like I said, you need a replacement in depth on that one as well, since you parted ways with Stephen Tulloch. I was wondering if who knows, if he was still available, maybe if the Lions would have possibly selected Miles Jack in the second round. You never know. I think injuries might have hampered his draft stock as well, but that's still a very formidable player. I wouldn't mind having, a defensive back set with DeAndre Levy, but the Lions did the best that they could do in terms of helping strengthening their defense. It was clearly focused their first primary objective in this draft. Continue to repair your offensive line first, because a built offensive line means a protected and healthy Matthew Stafford. And a protected and healthy Matthew Stafford gives you the best chance of having long-term success if you're the Lions. I think that's their rationale, what they're thinking behind that.
Oh, yeah. I want to get to the Grand Rapids Griffins, too. Since this is a Michigan Sports Truth, Griffins, they swept their first round opponent, and now they're down 3-0 to the Lake Erie Monsters. They eliminated the Milwaukee Admirals. It just came back to me. Yeah, but the Grand Rapids Griffins, especially games 2 and 3. Game 2, they were letting the referees decide the game instead of trying to fight back from down 4-3 when they had a 6-on-4 power play with an empty net for 6-man. And Bob Kaiser was saying there was no sense of urgency from the Griffins when they were on the attack in Game 2, and then in Game 3 they only settled for 1 goal and lost 2-1 at Van Andel Arena, which put them in a 3-0 hole. Game 4 is Tuesday night at 7. Can the Griffins light a fire under themselves and try to win at least one game? If not, then they're just done in 4 games, swept after sweeping the Admirals. I'm not even sure how the Griffins thus far have fallen apart as a team. But speaking of Michigan, their softball team has won their 9th straight Big Ten conference. It was an outright regular season Big Ten conference championship.
All right, go blue.
Yeah. They smashed the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 11-1 Saturday afternoon in Ann Arbor.
Maybe they got the inspiration. Maybe they got the proper inspiration after seeing Jim Harbaugh do what he did off the tee and hit the dab.
Holy smokes. Go blue is right.
Touchdown, Michigan! I will say that before we move on to 5 questions, I meant to bring this up during the topic of the Wings. Congratulations, by the way, to 2016 Kentucky Derby winner Nyquist. Hey, at least somebody named Nyquist won something of measurable success this past spring.
Yeah, he won the 142nd annual running of the Kentucky Derby this year. The question is, though, I'm going to go out on a limb and say and ask, can he win the Triple Crown? I'm not so sure, but you never know.
I think, who knows? Maybe some people are still on the high of what they saw American Pharoah do last year. They maybe think, oh yeah, it can happen. No, there is a reason why we went years and years and years and years without a Triple Crown winner in horse racing. Okay, it's right. Extremely difficult to pull off. You never know what can happen, what type of outside force or factor could find its way into determining who wins the race or whatever the case may be. But like I said, at least a person named Nyquist or something named after Nyquist won something worth of value and importance this past spring.
And their Michigan basketball team lost Cameron Chapman to a transferal, and we also heard that Spike Albrecht has made his official transfer to the Purdue Boilermakers as a fifth-year senior.
Which I'm happy for Spike, because not only gives him the chance to stay in the conference, possibly compete for one more Big Ten title, gives him the chance to go back home to the state of Indiana. You know, I mentioned out the possibility, hey, maybe we'll see what the Hoosiers will take a chance on him, but hey, you know, you're with Purdue, that's, you know, just as good, because you're staying within the state and you're staying within the conference. So I'm happy for Spike. I hope he can battle back as much as he can, because, you know, those injuries, I'm sure, were a pain to deal with physically as well as emotionally, knowing what it did in cutting short his season last year.
And speaking of Michigan, speaking of college basketball in the Mitten, the Michigan State Spartans have picked up graduate transfer. I think it's a guard, but his name is Ben. Shoot, I forgot his name, but I'm going to look it up on MSUSpartansRate.com right now, just to make sure I remember. Sports, men's basketball. Come on, baby. That's a UNLV.
Is it Ben Carter?
Ben Carter, thank you very much. Yeah, the Spartans picked up UNLV Rebel graduate transfer Ben Carter.
Well, I think it's a move that helps him out, because Michigan State, I think, knowing the impending departure of Denzel Valentine to the draft, period, since he was a senior himself, I don't think he was going to be going for a grad transfer. They wanted some immediate help while preparing to transition to your next 3 or 4 year starter in the front court. So getting Ben Carter would help fill that void for the temporary aspect to help, and while we wait for the long-term aspect to come to fruition. So very nice pickup for MSU in that regard.
That is true. I think the Spartans needed that one. So I think we've covered everything now. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth. Are you ready, Ed?
Absolutely. Let them rip, Taylor.
Same here.
It's time for 5 questions with Taylor the Gator Phillips.
Question number 1. Should the Tigers have fired Brad Ausmus after the end of 2014?
2014, no. If you were to ask the question, should they have fired him at the end of 2015, I would say hell yes. I'm pretty sure Mike Ilitch would be thinking the same thing right about now. 2014, it's the first year jitters, whatever the case. They still made the playoffs. You know, I was hesitant. I probably would have made the decision, seeing how he performed in the series against Baltimore. That was just an absolute calamity on all levels. Again, real undecisive. I would have still given him the benefit of the doubt and then fired him after seeing what he did in 2015.
Very interesting, but very appropriate as well, since 2014 was better than 2015, considering.
Next question.
Question number 2. Even if the Tigers fired Brad Ausmus now or soon, is their 2016 regular season still salvageable?
I say yes, it's still early. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but you got to make sure it doesn't get away from you too fast. You don't want to get lost in the shuffle in the Tour de France, so to speak. So if you got to make a decision on Osmus, do it now. Get rid of him. I would say promote Omar Vizquel as your interim for now while you look for your replacement. Try to find your permanent replacement before the year is out. And with this, and hopefully it's send a message to possibly reinvigorate this team and get them to gel together, fix any issues that might be lingering amongst themselves. And I still think this season might be salvageable from a standpoint of, hey, if you win enough games inside the Central Division, you may get yourself a wild card. I don't think the way they're performing, no, we're not expecting them to contend for a division title. Hey, if they fix things up, get more outside help, contributing help rather, from other players other than your stars, I can see this team possibly still having the chance to end up as one of the wild cards at the end of the year.
Next question.
Question number 3. When is Ken Holland going to be fired as Red Wings general manager?
My prediction, either another first-round exit next year or they finally miss the playoffs. Those are the only two scenarios that I see happening if, should it would call upon the Ilitch family to finally fire Ken Holland.
All right.
Next question.
That's a good one there. Question number 4. What are the free agent targets that the Pistons should go after this offseason?
Well, there's one that immediately shoots the top of my list, and that's Ryan Anderson, the forward from the New Orleans Pelicans. There was some talks that maybe the Pistons would probably try to possibly garner an interest of a trade for him, but knowing that he's going to be a free agent this upcoming off season, just get him now, and he will be an impressive guy to put next to rotate in terms of your stretch forwards who can give you good offense between him and Tobias Harris for sure. I'd also focus more on bench help because that was one key thing, one detriment that led to their sweep against Cleveland. They had little to no bench help at all. When you're relying on the likes of Steve Blake, to try and help you out while your starters are getting rest, you're screwed. So the Pistons first and foremost, they need to find themselves a versatile or at least a offensive producing backup point guard or backup guard period. I've seen I was hoping, maybe, who knows, we could probably go after DJ Augustine or Jameer Nelson. Augustine, who knows, maybe he decides he wants to stay in Denver more rather than being reunited with the Pistons. I could also see them possibly going after Brandon Jennings, bringing him back under the umbrella. There's also the chance, though, that maybe, just maybe, Jeff Bauer and Stan Van Gundy, they're not done with poaching talent from the Orlando Magic yet, and they could possibly go after Evan Fournier. So those are your hordes of options for what the Pistons could do. First and foremost, primarily, get better help off your bench. Fix that first, and the other pieces will fall in line after that. Fix your bench, you'll be straight after that. Or close to it, at least.
Yeah, because the bench has not produced, unlike Stanley Johnson, who has been the only contributor from the bench for the Pistons this past season through the playoffs.
But it needs to be more than him, and you also need guys to be more consistent with their production off the bench. You don't want to see Aaron Baines look great one night and then look average at best the next. So that's why I'm saying Ryan Anderson would really help in this regard.
Next question.
Finally, question number 5. How are the Lions going to fare with their 2016 draft picks?
Well, if I had to get the draft a grade, I liked some picks that they made, picking Taylor Decker, picking Sean Robinson. Some picks has absolutely confused the hell out of me. Why in God's name did you need a quarterback, and why the hell do you need to draft a long snapper? So, as a whole, I would give the draft grade a low B-, very, very low B-, but still passing. I won't think, aside from Sean Robinson, this won't be and maybe Decker, there won't be a tremendous turnaround from what we see, from what this draft class can do and produce, as opposed to what we saw initially from what Sue and Sue did, and then the year after that with Fairley. Looking at what their schedule is right now, I'm dead serious. The Lions, they could go 8-8. For now, that's my possible prediction. That's my early prediction. They are an 8-8 team, and with this coaching staff, with this head coach, they'll be lucky to get the 8-8 period.
Oh, just one more quick breaking news update. The Lions have acquired linebacker John Bostic in a trade with the New England Patriots for an undisclosed conditional draft pick. Bostic recorded 141 tackles from 2013 to 2014.
Getting Bostic would definitely help with filling the void of, because even though Tulloch had his issues with coverage and whatnot, he's still going to do a lot of tackles from that spot. So filling that with this trade would definitely help matters as well. In addition to making the draft pick of Robinson as well in that regard for their linebacking core.
Yeah, that's true. So that wraps it up for 5 questions, and for all the listeners and fans out there, if you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. Another reminder, please share this podcast on all social media networks, and thanks very much, and please keep it clean. Thanks again. That wraps up episode 211 of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, thanks so much again for your help. Again, welcome back. I'll talk to you again either Thursday or Friday on episode 212. We will update the scheduled day for episode 212 on Twitter.
Looking forward to it, Taylor, and thank you so much for the welcome back.
And for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less of on our podcast, please let us know. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appetit.